All right, so this is going to be a short set of notes, but we're just doing more advanced order of operations here with day 2 for intermediate algebra. So remember that the key is that we are evaluating what we are doing here. So evaluate will let you know that you are going to do something along the lines of PEMDAS. When we take a look at this problem here, and hopefully you can see that instead of our previous notes, they already put things without the division symbol, the old school division guy. Remember, we're not doing that. He becomes a fraction bar there. Okay, so on that note, we do, however, have potential parentheses around every numerator and denominator. Of course, if a numerator or denominator is just a number, you don't necessarily need to think about that. But as we work through, notice that we have parentheses here and here, so parentheses. If you have multiple sets of parentheses, remember the innermost parenthesis would be first, but in this case these are not necessarily together, so we'll just move left to right. So this first one here, as we're solving, is going to become 8 over 5 minus 1, which is 4, and then that's still going to be 3 plus 6, and then times 3. Then as we move through, of course, we want to keep going with our parentheses. So as much as we know 8 divided by 4 is 2, let's go ahead and not simplify until we actually know that that's the next step. So 3 plus 6 is 9, and then that will be times 3. Now, as you can see, we do have division, multiplication, and multiplication going on. And anytime that you have multiplication and division, we're going to move left to right. So all the way on our left is this fraction here. And so we're going to go ahead and change that fraction into what 8 divided by 4 is. So we'll have 2 times 9 times 3. Continuing on, we're now going to get 2 times 9, which is 18, and then 18 times 3. And so we'll end up with 54. 30 plus 24. Yep. So if you went ahead during this note set and wrote down the example and then paused, worked through the problem, and then got 54, super. If you got something else, you may have ended up maybe simplifying a little bit too soon with something that you thought was maybe easy. For instance, I mean, I see, not necessarily in this one, but a lot of times people will automatically divide, even though it's maybe not the next step that's going on. So we'll see a few examples that kind of represent that. The next example here, again, the idea is to evaluate. You can see here that we now have an exponent. So when we're looking through our PEMDAS operations, we're going to go for parentheses, but then also exponents. So the parentheses set here is what we're going to evaluate first. So as we're writing this down, 39 will not have anything done to it because it's not parentheses. But 5 minus 3 will in fact be a new number of 2, and then subtracting 3. Remember that technically there is a set of parentheses here, so we just did our innermost parentheses. So moving on, we now want to do the exponents. Okay, so we've got our exponents inside of that outer parenthesis. And so our exponent of 2 squared becomes 4, which means that we're really looking at 39 over 4 times 4 minus 3. Continuing on that process, again, this denominator is in parentheses set, so we're going to focus our attention there as well. And so we're going to move on to 4 times 4, which would happen in multiplication and division before addition or subtraction. Even though 4 minus 3 is 1, and we think that that's a little bit easier to do right away than 16 from 4 times 4, the order of operations says you must do multiplication first. So we are now left with 39, and that's going to be divided by 16 minus 3. And continuing on, we're going to end up with 39 over 13, because again, we're looking for 16 minus 3. And then 39 divided by 13 ends up with 3. So our result for this example is 3. All right. The last example here, I would like you to, again, try to pause the video right now and see if you can come up with a solution. You are at home all by yourself. It does not matter if you get the wrong answer. The idea is that once you get the wrong answer, you go through this process and figure out how to do it the correct way. So go ahead and pause and figure out what this might become, and then turn back on and we will finish. So as you're working through this problem, you are going to notice that this denominator, as usual, would have a parenthesis around it. So as we're going through the order of operations, parentheses is what we want to do. If you are using kind of an old school calculator, it turns out as you type a radical or a square root, as this is down here, you end up actually getting like a square root, and then they'll put a parenthesis. And so there are technically parentheses around this inner part as well. So a lot of calculators, especially the older ones, can't necessarily make this horizontal line up here. And so because of that, they have parentheses, because that's actually what's happening, is that this section here is being grouped, and then you will take the square root. So either way, right now we're doing parentheses, the innermost part. And so the innermost part of these parentheses leaves you with a 27 still on top, and a square root of this first set, which is 2 plus 3. Remember, we're moving left to right, so 5. And then 5 will be added to 4 eventually, and then way at the end we'll subtract an 8. Continuing on the inside of this parenthesis that's technically here, we're going to change that 5 plus 4 into its 9 equivalent. So 27 is going to be divided by the square root of what is now going to be 9, and then we'll subtract 8 from that. The next thing is doing, again, these parentheses of this 9, or the fact that it is the square root of 9, this denominator. So either way, however you look at it, you are in fact doing this denominator. Officially, as we move through our math curriculum, it turns out that 9 is actually being raised to the 1/2 power here, so it is actually under exponents and not parentheses, but doesn't actually matter, still a square root. That is going to be the next step. So 27 is now going to be divided by what would be 3 from the square root of 9. And then based on our order of operations, since we have no more parentheses, the idea is that we would move through multiplication and division, so this here, and then subtract 8. So 27 divided by 3 becomes 9. 9 minus 8 becomes 1. All right, so again, a very short set of notes, but the idea is that perhaps you would be able to go through each of these examples maybe again later and see if you can get that same result, because there are many steps in here that you could have done to make this feel easier, but not actually get the answer of 1. So that is that.